Hey, everybody, welcome to the daily update for Monday, April 27th, 2026. Happy Monday. I'm back from my 4-day sojourn to Houston, rested, ready to go. A little bit of a scratchy voice. That's what happens when you go from 87 and rainy to 62 and cool. But I will talk a little bit about Houston in a second. But let's just get to it, right? Let's talk about what happens when the worst happens. And by that, of course, I mean the stock formerly known as Poet. All right, so if you are a Lund Loop subscriber, if you've been around any amount of time, you know that I have been heavily involved in Poet since last year. If you're not a Lund Loop subscriber, you're new here, just for context, everything I'm going to reference today is something that I've talked about in real time, either in the trading room or in the daily update. So this is not Monday morning quarterbacking. This is not 2020 hindsight. Poet has always been for me what I call an active investment strategy. Now there's 5 types of strategies. There are scalps, day trades, swing trades, active investments, and long-term investments. The difference between an active investment and a long-term investment is you're going to hold an active investment for a longer term period, but you're going to use short-term tools, trading tools, to lower your cost basis, both in building that position and in managing the position. So last year, I started to build a position in Poet, and that was mostly done by selling puts. So I sold puts. If I was assigned the shares, I got them at a lower cost basis. If not, I pocketed the premium and then just rewrote the puts. In addition, I traded around the core position, buying and selling ancillary positions at Poet to lower the cost basis. In addition, I also sold partials in short-term calls against positions to lower the cost basis. Okay, so coming in today, my overall cost basis on Poet was $6.51. This is something I've posted in the trading room. It's probably lower than that if you factor in all the captured premiums on the calls and the puts and some of the trading around, but we're just going to call it 651. Let's call it 650 to make it easy. Poet dropped 50% today, right? Some news broke. You can go look it up. Really bad reaction in the stock. But last week, it ripped 108%. Last week, I had my first 6-figure day. I had a second day that was almost 6 figures. It was the biggest week I've ever had. A lot of that was due to Poet. Okay. If Poet had spent 3 or 4 months grinding higher from the mid 6s up until the high 15s, I probably would have had every share that I started with today coming into that news. But that's not what Poet did. Like I said, it ripped 108% last week. When that happened, the risk manager, the trader in me came out. And so I had to start taking risk off. So what did I do? I sold positions and converted commons into long-term leaps. So doing that, capturing profit, going from unlimited risk to limited risk, meaning just the premium paid, while still capturing upside. In addition, I sold commons just outright and didn't replace them with options, particularly on Friday, pretty close to the highs. I didn't buy the commons because I thought that they were just too fat. And also, I just thought there would be some sort of pullback. Okay. So today, stock opens, or the news breaks. In fact, it was trading about $1.60 up before the open, and I was kind of lamenting that maybe I had sold too much, that I was maybe too aggressive. Then the news breaks, the stock starts to tank. I couldn't sell it pre-market because it's in my wife's IRA at Fidelity, and for some reason they only were allowing a sell on open. So what I did was I sold everything out. Let's just take a look here. And again, this is all in real time. This is a 1-minute chart. So it opened here, it popped a little bit here, and when it started to roll back, I sold it. So sold it all basically around 10 as well as the calls. And I'm completely flat on Poet. All right, so I mentioned I was out in Houston last week for 4 days. Unfortunately, I was there for the funeral of my wife's uncle. he, my wife has about 125, 150 relatives out in Houston. Aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, grandparents, nieces, nephews, cousins. Out of all that whole family there, this uncle that died was the center of that family. He was like the glue of that family. If there was an org chart and you said, who could I remove from this family that would cause the most devastation and the most pain? Who would leave the biggest hole that could never be filled? It would be this gentleman. He was also a major pillar in the Catholic Church out there. He was a deacon, which means he was a volunteer. He had a full-time job. He had a business he ran with his wife, and he still gave the church 30 to 40 hours a week, every week for decades. And that meant he was known by clergy all across the world, like going all the way to Rome. His funeral was so massive that a quarter of the church, a huge church, was filled with my wife's family. Another quarter was filled by clergy from all over the world. And the other 50% were parishioners that were just, piling out into the street. There was such an overflow there. They actually had a bishop do his mass. A cardinal, not a bishop, a cardinal. So it wasn't an archbishop, not a bishop, a cardinal. The cardinal of the Diocese of Houston did his mass, okay? So not only is his loss going to cause an unfillable hole in my wife's family, an unfillable hole in that diocese out there, but he leaves behind a wife, two relatively young children, two boys in their 20s, and two grandchildren. What happens when the worst happens? I don't know. You would have to ask my wife's aunt and her sons. All that happened to me was I spent last week selling chunks of my position up 75%, up 100%, up 130% from my cost basis. Even today, selling after the drop at the open, I still sold between 60 and 75% above my cost basis. My wife's uncle, he had chest pains for 5 days. He said to his friend, I'm okay. I just need to rest. It went on for 5 days. And on the 5th day, he was at his office and he collapsed in the lobby and he died on his 68th birthday. What happens when the worst happens? You have to ask my wife's aunt and her sons. Because all that happened to me was I just didn't get out at the top of a position. In fact, if I hadn't even seen the top of that position and I just got out where I did, I would have looked back on this and said, this is one of the best trades, the most profitable trades I've ever had. So I mourn for my wife's family out there. And I am so grateful for what I have and for what happened in this position. And all I can do is I can say, when it comes to the market, all I can do is do a post-mortem on this trade and try to figure out what I did right, what I did wrong in real time, extract some lessons from that, and try to take those forward with me because I know I'll be in positions like this before. The way I got into this position, selling the puts, the way I managed the position, trading around it, selling calls short-term to lower the cost basis. I can't find anything wrong with that. I just can't find anything wrong with the way I did that. Last week, transitioning from active investment to temporary trader, temporary risk manager, selling positions as they went up, rolling them into limited risk. I can't find anything wrong with that because it would have been really easy for me to say, hey, these are 3 to 5 year positions. I'm not going to micromanage it. This thing's going to be way higher. So I can't find anything wrong with that. Selling today at the open without even really thinking. Look, we don't trade on narratives, but when narratives and price line up, we pay attention to the narratives. And the narrative's really bad. It's like Poet violated some privacy or exclusivity clause with Marvell. My first thought is good news could pop this stock 50% tomorrow. But the probability that is so low that I'm out. I got to take my win and move on. I'm not going to worry about the high water mark. I got to go. If Poet pops 50% tomorrow, it will still be the right move. Because right now, as I sit here, it's a very low probability that it's going to recover. So, having said that, the only fault I can find in this trade is that I wasn't clairvoyant, that I didn't know this was going to happen. And that's a lot to ask there, right? So, despite the fact that I hate that it dropped today, despite the fact that I came in off my highs, I really have to rate this as a good trade, and that I managed it to the best of my abilities. Will I not be happy again until my wife's account is back to the high water mark? Yes. But this is what happens in the market. This comes with the territory. Things like this happen, and you just have to be ready for it. I particularly am glad that the trader guy stepped in and started to manage risk, because we talk about how you can have a day trade and you can transition it to a swing trade if the price justifies it. It's the other way as well. You can have an active trade and you can go back the other way and manage risk like it's a swing trade or even a day trade if price justifies it. 108% in 1 week, that justifies it. So look, anybody can throw up a chart and draw lines on it and say this thing looks good. But if you don't know the mental game, if you don't know the psychological game, if you don't know the emotional game of trading, none of that's going to matter. And you're not going to be profitable, and you're going to lose money. This is what I do every day in the daily update. This is what I do in the Lund Loop community, is I talk about that game, the mental game, the psychological game, the emotional game. I show you what I'm thinking, flawed thinking, correct thinking, all my thinking, right? Because I want to find out what the weaknesses are in my mental game, my emotional game, my psychological game. If you want to be part of a community that can help you with those aspects of your trading, you should become a member of the Lund Loop. It doesn't matter if you are a novice, an intermediate, or a beginner. Take advantage of the hundreds of years of combined trading and investing experience in this community, and bring your own experience to it. And when you do that, we all become better, more profitable traders and investors. All right. That's that. That's Poet. Let's get to all the technicals.